Yeah.
50 what?
It's an hour and... What's my run?
9:14.
That's an hour and 20... Almost an hour and a half longer than my last run here. That's how tough it was. I had diarrhea the whole day. I was pooping probably every 20 minutes. I just couldn't quit pooping. It was horrible.
Yeah, it does.
It was bad. But that's okay. I'll save it for your show.
Well, I'm recording, so...
Oh, you are? Right on. Cool.
I won't put that in.
Dude, no, you don't. I don't care. All right, go ahead.
You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. I have taken the podcast on the road to Penticton to spend a few weeks with my Ultra friends. Today I speak with the winners of Ultraman Canada, and Steve King joins me to give you the details on the 16 people who will be participating in the final 520K Canada race this weekend. I am dropping this episode a few days early so that you will have the time to familiarize yourself with the 520 Canada athletes prior to the race. I've been in Penticton for the past week, meeting up with the Ohana, and my girlfriend Ashley and I have been doing our best to support Japanese athlete Makoto Hoshino on his Ultraman journey. Makoto was on my second episode, and I knew he was someone I wanted to get to know better. Regular listeners know that we wanted to be on the course with Makoto, but that was taken out of our hands. Lucy was able to pull together a great crew last minute for him by recruiting Ariane Allen, who she raced with at Steve Brown's Ultraman Canada in 2013, and Ariane's friend Jamie Higgins. Spoiler alert, Mokato is an Ultraman, and we are all very proud of him. Along with his good friend Eiko Hibino, who had Ultraman alum Will Rogers and Jeremy Couch on her crew. The race conditions this year were not too bad by Penticton standards. The heat remained reasonable and the headwinds weren't as strong as some years, and there are currently no wildfires creating smoke. There were 15 finishers from the field of 22 at Ultraman Canada. And in a sport where women are greatly outnumbered by the men, 4 of the top 5 spots were taken by amazing female athletes. Congratulations to Amy Robitaille, Leanda Cave, Marla Zook, and A.A. Girard. Both A.A. and Amy had their coach present, Ultraman Canada alum and 2011 world champion Mike Cogley. I spoke to the winners near the finish line, so you may hear Steve King in the background as we are talking. Okay, 515 podcast fans, I'm here with Christian Isaakson. Christian was the leader of the Ultraman Canada after day 1 and day 2. He is the top male at the race this year, but he finished 3rd overall with 2 women coming in before him. He was 2nd out of the swim. He was a 9:14 on his run today, and an overall time of 25:49:51. Now, Christian, this is not your first time here doing this course, so tell us a little bit about how this race may be compared to your last time out.
It was much difficult. It was way more difficult for sure. Last time I was here was 8 years ago, and my times were quicker basically all 3 days. I think that the heat and the wind on days 1 and 2 on the bike really showed up in my body today on the run for sure. But it was like Kona windy yesterday. I mean, it was really, really, really a difficult bike. And I knew at the end of the day that I had lit a couple of matches. And I felt them definitely today on the run for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, out there on the run today, it was a little bit hot. It stayed overcast. It's probably not the hottest run that we've had here, but it's still a very tough run given the elevations and the changes and things. So how was it?
Yeah, I think this is the the toughest run course of any Ultraman I've ever raced. I've been to Kona twice. I've done Florida twice. I've done this twice. It's so tough. I was laughing at myself at the very tail end because I wanted to come in today and knock maybe 10 or 15 minutes off the last time I raced here. I raced a 750, which still isn't like lightning fast. But I figured if I could rip off a 7:35, which I think I'm pretty capable of doing on the right day. But when I'm up there, I'm like, what was I thinking, man? Like, it is such it just peels away the layers. So, but it was a tough 3 days all around. The swim was good. The first day on the bike, coming in first was cool. It was really neat. That was a new experience for me. Leading after day 2, coming into day 3 with a 25-minute lead. It was definitely a nice surprise for me.
And what about your competitors out there? Tell me a little bit about when you're out there and you're seeing these ladies working so hard and coming up and taking over on you. Like, what are you feeling when you see these great competitors out there?
Amy, the one that when Amy and I rode yesterday together from like mile 30 to probably mile 130. She just looked solid, and I'm like, I'm gonna let her go ahead of me. I followed her for a little bit. She just looked too good. I was trying to stay within my race. And Leanda, I wasn't 100% sure what her motivation for being here was, because I know she wants to check the box to get to Hawaii. She wants to do that.
Obviously, nobody does this without their crew. Tell me who you had on your crew.
Ted, who is one of my closest friends. I was a firefighter with him for 15, 16 years, and then he moved to Kenya. I spent a lot of time with him over at Kenya. It afforded me the ability to go to Kenya, run with Kenyans, which has been pretty cool. My wife, and then Michael, Owen, and Becky, who live here. Michael is an amazing runner in his own right. He's a phenomenal athlete. And then my son surprised me last night, driving up, walked into the hotel room at like 11 o'clock. And I was like, what the heck, dude? So he wanted to be here for today, which is pretty darn cool.
That's awesome, because it's really important when you come across that finish line to have that crew and that family to support you.
Absolutely. It is. It's it's because if you didn't have them, you wouldn't be here. I think it's amazing to me. And I was thinking about on the run today. I think that's the big difference between Ironman and Ultraman, with my own personal experience, is it definitely feels like to me there's a more organic vibe at Ultraman, and I think collectively as a whole that's the general feel. Not saying that Ironman is a little bit plastic, but it is. I've spent years racing Ironman, and I would give it all away for one day here with these Ultraman athletes in a heartbeat.
A lot of fantastic people that come to these races and come back year after year. Yeah. And what was the one stat that stuck in your ear when you heard Steve King call some of your race this weekend? Because I know he always has something that maybe you've even forgotten.
I think when he said men's champion is kind of weird. You know what I mean? And I love Steve. Steve King was there when I was almost killed in Kona in 2015. And I've been waiting for the opportunity. I raced in Florida in 2019. Did really well. It was my first Ultraman back after my accident. Third place there, which is cool. But having him here is one of the motivating factors for me to reflect my best effort, because he does what he does to the best of his ability. So I think we need to bring all our crap to the table too.
Well, thank you very much, men's champion Christian.
Thanks,
awesome job.
Thank you so much.
Now I'm joined with Amy Robitaille, the Ultraman Canada 2022 champion and women's champion, but the champion of this race. How does it feel to be crowned champion of an Ultraman?
Pretty unreal, actually. Not what I was expecting, especially to be overall champion is something that I just didn't expect that to happen at all. But here we are. Magic.
Magic. And so what got Ultraman in your head? Or who? It's usually a who.
Yeah, who was Mike Coughlin.
Former Ultraman Mike Coughlin.
So when I met him, he was training for Ultraman Hawaii 2015. So he was right in the thick of his training. It was about a year out from the actual race. And he was coaching a friend of mine her and I signed up for Muskoka 70.3 together. This is a really big thing. I was terrified of the whole race because it was big, and I wanted to do okay. So I was like, your coach sounds amazing. And I, met with him and told him that I will practice biking, but you can't let it affect my running that I like to do all the time, he was like, yeah, okay. So he put me through some big workouts for someone that hadn't done a lot of bike workouts. But watching his process training for the Ultraman, getting so invested in his actual race. I mean, we had a party at my house watching day 3 of Ultraman Hawaii. It was pretty special. And I just kind of knew at that point that it would probably end up being in my future. And I mean, that was 2015, and it's 2022 at this point. So it's always been sort of in the background there. And through him coaching me all these years, my biking has gotten stronger and actually enjoyable, and I will give up runs to go and bike. Here we are. I decided, and I crewed, and my husband crewed for a friend who did Ultraman Florida in 2020, February 2020, right before there were no more races for a long time. And it was such an amazing experience because it's about more than just the athlete, right? Like, and I knew I'm just a sucker for that kind of thing. So I knew at that point, I'll probably end up. And I mean, this place is so amazing. I knew, and I had never been to BC, so I knew Ultraman Canada was signing up or applying to it was a big deal. Like, are they even going to think I'm, worthy enough to do this race? And there were a few drinks poured when they said yes. So.
That's great. And Mike did come along, and he's here crewing because that's what the Ohana do. Tell me what it was like to have him here since he's been on this journey with you.
Well, I mean, when I asked him if he could make it work with my other amazing crew members, and he said, I can make it work. I want to be there. I was thrilled and didn't really, he was like, so what will my role be? And I was like, I'm not good at assigning, designating, whatever, because I just felt like it would come together, and it sure did. Even from going through, the course and things to expect on the course, and because I just arrived here on Tuesday, his experience here, but also, knowing me for 7 years as my coach certainly helped. And my husband has told me that in the van over the last, 3 days, his, knowledge of, okay, she's going to be at this point at this time, his crazy math calculations also have been handy, and just, knowing what the athlete needs. I didn't know what I needed in some cases, and he was like, you should do, at this point you should really be focusing on nutrition, that ride into Princeton. And I was like, okay, I need to do, something to focus on other than the headwind and whatever. So and then of course at the turn in Princeton to go north, he ran beside me as I was biking and said, okay, your Garmin says 6:58 right now. The women's record is 9:03. You have 30K out, 30K back. You do the math. And I was like, oh no, this is a thing now. I can't, how amazing would it be to... Anyway, so, and it did work out, and there is magic involved in that. So to have him, I guess, geeking out on the stats really helped.
Yeah, and you did set the record with an 8:45.19 on that day 2 bike, so that's amazing. I know, yes, like you're saying, Mike, knowing the course and knowing you is probably the best thing that could happen for an athlete, because sometimes coaches will come but they don't know the course, or people that have crewed before know the course but they don't know the athlete. You had both the best worlds, and that's probably one of those things that really helped get you to that finish line in first place.
It did. And I think that the other, the third piece, I hate saying piece, but the third piece of that was that he knows the spirit of Ultraman as well, right? Like, he knows how valuable the crew is, and how the crew working together is... my crew, I can't even describe how amazing every one of them were in this whole thing, and him having that experience and knowing, and it's about the other athletes too and their crews, him having that, bringing that experience in, and my husband having crewed before as well. That really, you cannot, I could not have built a better crew. My friend Nicole was like, she was my nutrition, clipboard, right, checking off, making sure, and they were problem solving for me. On day 1, I had stomach issues, and my paddler, Mike Mahoney, was like, I think his is the absolute straightest line down that lake, kept me on course. And yeah, I have lucked out to have the support from the people that I love and care about and are rooting for me.
Yeah, and that's what makes the race so special, is that you have that, and instead of the Ironman experience where they're somewhere on the sideline clapping.
Right, yeah, for sure. And, I have my children at home, and my mom has been watching them for, the whole week, and, they've been...
Shout out to Mom then.
Shout out to Grandma. Really, couldn't have done this without you. Yeah, so knowing that, and all the training for this, just knowing that I have people rooting for me is, it's very humbling and very, it also keeps you engaged fully. Yeah.
Well, you had an amazing race. As I said, you were the overall winner of Ultraman Canada 2022 with a time of 24:47:16. Congratulations, Amy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It is interesting but not surprising that both of those athletes felt the need to mention how the spirit of Aloha, Kokua, and Ohana were such a big part of their experience. Today I was supposed to be joined by the two Steves who have been the backbone of triathlon in Penticton for decades. Unfortunately, Steve Brown has been having technical difficulties and is not able to join us. However, Steve King is here, and with Steve Brown's consent, we will just go ahead. Today we will be previewing the athletes that have the honor of being the final group of athletes for the 520K race, as Steve has decided to retire the 520 format in favor of the 355 format moving forward. Now, that news was broken a few episodes ago here on the 515 podcast, but for listeners who may have missed that episode, perhaps, Mr. King, you can give us a little bit of the Coles Notes version of what brought that forward with Steve Brown and his organization.
Well, as you're very well aware, Larry, there are two events at the Ultraman distance that are hosted here 1 week apart. And coming up this weekend, we have Ultraman Canada, followed next weekend by the Ultra 520 Canada event. And no one needs that sort of conflict in any way, shape or form. And Steve, along with a few other people like Van Sanchez out of Mexico, Tony Horton out of Australia, I know Nick Mallet was keen on putting one on in Thailand as well. These people are keen on putting on what is a 3-day event, but non-assisted. In other words, no crews. And the 3-day event would consist of a 5K swim followed by a 100K on the bike, and day 2 would be 175K on the bike, and day 3 would be a 50K run. So that's what we can anticipate seeing next year, but Ultraman Canada will still be a go ongoingly.
Right. And Penticton has been getting fully back into its sporting events in the past few weeks, and you've been a very busy man working at these things. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on in Penticton for the last few weeks?
You bet. We've had a Grand Fondo here, which is 4 different distances. We've had that for a number of years, and this year was the 10th edition. So we were delighted to have it back since the last time was in 2019. And we were thrilled to see we had 3,000 riders taking part in that. Thank goodness the weather changed. It was a beautiful day for the event, very successful. And in fact, the day beforehand, we have the Piccolo Fondo, which is 5 different distances for very young kids. And it was wonderful to see them to get things in motion. And then last weekend, the Sunday just gone, Steve Brown and his team, we put on the Peach Classic Triathlon, which is a sprint and Olympic or standard distance event. And it was the very first triathlon ever hosted in the Okanagan Valley from 1983 onwards. So it was our 40th year. So we were absolutely thrilled. That was very successful. It was the BC Championships and also a qualifier for the World Championships in 2023.
Oh, excellent. And did any of the locals come out at the top of the podium in any of those groups?
Indeed. In the sprint, it was a local physician in the women's division who won the sprint. In the Olympic or standard distance, it was a gentleman, Corey Christ from Kelowna, followed by Martin Caron of Penticton, 1 and 2. So we were thrilled to see those locals doing so well.
Oh, excellent. Now, you and Steve Brown have been, as I said at the beginning, kind of the backbone of the triathlon community here for a number of decades. I'm wondering, can you tell our listeners, how exactly did you two first meet? It must have been at an event.
It would have been an event, I would say probably in the 80s, because we were both doing Ironman races in the 80s, and Steve was hosting events as well. We had the interior road races that we were putting on. I've been involved in the Ironman distance race since 83, the Peach Classic since 83. Steve has been a race director of both of those events, and it was just natural when he put the first Ultraman race on in 1993 that I would be involved in that as well. And then I was lucky enough to do the event myself in 1994.
Yeah. Now, I know with COVID and travel restrictions that that's kind of reduced the number of athletes attending both of the races coming up in the next couple of weeks here for the 5:15 distances. And in addition, there's also been a few late drops like there are at any of these races, including the athlete that Chad Bentley and I were going to be crewing for. So that said, let's get into introducing the remaining 16 athletes that are going to be attending this 520K.
Absolutely. As you're well aware, there are 11 men, there are 5 women. I think we've got 5 countries represented, the US, Australia, France, and Canada, and South Africa. And what's interesting is when you look at the age categories as well, it's quite remarkable. We have absolutely no one in the 20 to 29 category. We have 2 men and no women in the 30 to 39. We only have 1 man and 1 woman in the 40 to 49. We've got 8 men and 2 women in the 50 to 59. And in all the years we've had this event, we've never had a woman in the 60 plus category. But this year we have 2 women in that category. So quite remarkable. And we're hoping, obviously, both of them can finish and therefore set a benchmark for women in the 60 to 69 division. And it's going to be interesting because obviously you hope there's battles going on. But I think the one person in the 40 to 49 division, both male and female, are going to be stunned to find that there's no competition in the category. But it's not necessarily about the competition, but it is about getting there. And, that brings us to the first racer, Rebecca Ball. And she's out of Colorado, and she's been with us before. And a phenomenal swimmer. Like, she did a 3 hour and a few seconds swim the last time she was here, but unfortunately wasn't able to finish the bike on day number 2. However, I know she's been putting quite a bit of work for that as well to make sure she finishes. And she did have the guts, though, to go out onto the run and did something like 11 hours, 49 minutes on the run. So we certainly are pleased to see her back. She's got 4 Ironmen behind her now, and I think half a dozen 70.3s. So she's put the work in. She's got a great coach in Mary Carey, and we're looking forward to seeing her back here.
And she's also done something called the Elephant Rock Century. Do you know about that race?
Well, I think she's done that like 4 times, maybe 3 times, 2019 onwards. With the exception of 2020, like most people as well. So, yeah, so she's put in the cycling miles to make sure that she hopefully can get through that tough second day. It is a toughie. The course is far from easy. So we look forward to seeing her here with us.
Now, looking into the next category for the women, there are 2 women in the 50 to 59 category.
I think Lorraine Natho is one of those. She's out of Calgary. She's a doctor there. Races with critical speed. So coached by multi-time world Xterra champion, Calvin Zariski. And she actually has crewed with us before. She crewed for a Spaniard, Leo Lopez. That was in 2019. And that set her up for her plans to take on this challenge. And she's raced in the heat, including in places like Cozumel. So we certainly wish her well. And she's got a PR, I think, around 11:17. So she's part of a Guinness record team as well that ran together during a marathon in 2017. So I also know she's a very good swimmer in terms of, we know she'll get through the distance because she's done our Skaha Lake Ultra swim before. And that, as you know, is 11.8 kilometers.
Yep, and it's the same lake, so she knows the water.
Knows the water and got a great team. I think her sister's part of the team as well. So that's always very exciting to see. We've got a South African in the field as well, Retha Rousseau, you asked about, other women that are in the 50s. And she's a lawyer. She's raced with us before at Ironman Canada. I think she was just over 16 hours in that one, but she's got 45 marathons to her credit. She's done stage races like 250K in the Kalahari Desert and 38 ultras. So she'll be looking to make sure she gets to that third and final day. And that's going to be a tough one, for her, of course, as it is for a lot of people, is get through those 2 tough days. Because when you've done a 10K swim, some people spend anything. We've had a couple of people who are like a minute 30 in transition, other people who can be up to 30 minutes and in transition. So you hope that she's able to come through and do really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in that 60 to 69 category, as you said, there are 2 women there and another lawyer.
Yes. Paula Rochman, I think you're referring to there, out of Toronto.
Yeah.
Would that be the lady you're referring to? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, she's done Ironman here as well. She's raced in Nice, Mont Tremblant, Wisconsin, Muskoka, and she's raced in Lanzarote. And of course, Lanzarote, known as one of the toughest of the Ironman races around. She's got 31 marathons to her credit. I think like a dozen times at the Boston Marathon as well. So again, one of those people you just hope can get to that third and final day, because we'd love to see a battle in that women's 60 plus division. And then the other woman in that division is Susan Evans. And Susan is a phenomenal athlete, and we're just thrilled she's taking this on. She's coached by Jonathan Caron, or Johnny O as he's known here, of course. She's been putting in a lot of work. She retired, I think, 7 years ago and came into the sport in 2017, started doing indoor cycling classes, and now has done all sorts of things, including challenge Roth, Ironman Lake Placid. She's won her age division spots to the World Championships, been to Kona. So we are looking forward to big things from her. I mean, she has a PB of around 12:15, I think it is, has done like a 5.5 hour 70.3 as well. So I think we're in for something very special from her.
Yeah, and she has a connection to a couple of the other local Ultraman athletes as well, with Kevin Kutchar and Tracy McQuare.
Yeah, and Kevin, as you know, has won the Ultraman World Championship as well as Ultraman Canada, and Tracy McQuare has won Ultraman UK as well as Ultraman Canada. So we got a lot of good people on board locally as well. They're there as crew, as supporters, etc. So we're just thrilled.
Speaking of Tracy, I did have a conversation with her this weekend to inquire about her good friend Jenny Ayres. Those listening may know her from crewing at ultra races or from her own athletic accomplishments. If you do know her, you may have also heard that she had a mountain biking accident. She is in hospital in Vancouver, and Tracy says that her prognosis is very good for a full recovery. We wish you all the best for a speedy recovery, Jenny. Well, switching over to the men's field, there are 11 in total there. So let's start off with the youngest athlete in the field, a 35-year-old from here in British Columbia. Can you please tell us a little bit about Steven Sanderson?
Yeah, Steve is out of Chilliwack, I believe. He's a firefighter there, and I know he's done a couple of Ironman where he was in full gear. And that's a lot of poundage to be carrying with you. And I think that was obviously not through the swim or the bike, but on the run course. And the extra weight is something like 50 pounds. So, that, if you were, say, a 150 pounder and you're suddenly weighing 200 pounds, that's a heck of a workout. I've seen him actually do that. As you know, I am the race announcer for the Vancouver Marathon. And I think it was 7 years ago. He ran that in full gear as well.
Yeah, and he does that for a cause as well, does he not?
He does, yeah. For muscular dystrophy, I believe. He's been the firefighter of the year. He's won the award for that. Also a very good light heavyweight boxer. He's won silver and bronze gloves before. And I think he made something like $50,000 for the cause, and he's doing this one, I believe, in support of Crohn's and Colitis Canada. Because unfortunately, his sister Jen and other family members, friends have been impacted by the disease.
And is he intending to run the full double marathon in his gear this year?
You know, I hope not. I say that with nothing but the most admiration and respect, but you know as well as I do how tough that course is, and you've still only got 12 hours. And I say that, again, very respectfully. He's a very tough guy, obviously. But I'd hate for someone not to arrive at the finish line because the extra heat that gear, let alone the weight, and there's some serious climbs on that, as well as descents. And you can imagine that gas tank banging into the back of you. So I wouldn't like anyone to try that on this course.
Now, Steve, there are two men in the 40 to 49 age group. The first is a 42-year-old from Richmond, British Columbia, Jeremy Hopwood. He's originally from Australia, but he's going to be racing under the maple leaf for the race. Do you know about his previous experience in Penticton?
Oh, yeah, he's been here quite often. In fact, he was here with us for the ITU long course in 2017. He was actually a duathlon world champion at one point in the men's 35 to 39 division. We've seen him here at Challenge, Penticton as well. He's a sub 9:45 performer at Ironman. He's done Ironman Coeur d'Alene, and then he was around 9.5 hours when he did that event as well. So he would be someone I would expect to be near the front of the field.
Excellent. And then we have a second athlete in the 40 to 49 division with Justin Williams. What do we know about him, Steve?
Well, you may have heard me say earlier that there was just, I thought, one person in the 40 to 49. So thank you for correcting me on that. There are two men in that division and therefore 7 in the 50 to 59 division. And Justin Williams is, I think, originally out of Kansas City, Missouri. So we're delighted to have him with us. And he had spoken with Steve Brown, I think it was 4 years ago, decided he would take on this challenge. And he likes the heat as well. If you're going to do Ironman Texas, you've got to be okay with the heat. And he's done around 11.5 hours there. He's also done Ironman Canada, so knows this area. And 6 times at the iron distance and lots of 70.3s. So I'm not sure whether he'll be strong enough to as we say, take on Jeremy Hopwood, but we're looking at 3 days and anything can happen there, you know, and it's nice for Jeremy to have some age group competition. So we look forward to that.
Yeah. And I think you might have skipped over his greatest accomplishment, Steve. I understand that he also was consecutively second place in the potato sack race in both the 3rd and 4th grade.
I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for filling me in on that. I should certainly mention that during the course of the event.
Yeah.
The things we do, egg and spoon races, I remember doing them at school as well.
Yeah. Well, the next category then will definitely not be won by acclamation. It's our largest category with 7 athletes, the 50 to 59 men. And first up in that category is 51-year-old Morgan Boyle, and he's coming from Sherwood Park, Alberta. And he likes to do his Ironmans, but he likes to do them in the extreme form. So what do we know about Morgan?
Well, he knows BC. He was actually born in Vancouver. He's done the Canadian Death Race, 125K in Alberta, and that's a toughie. That's a running race, of course, if someone can run the entire thing, and some do. This has been on his bucket list for a long time, and I think the timing felt right to him, especially after having done Ironman, the Swiss Man Extreme, Alaska Man Extreme. And they're very tough. He's done 5 Ironman, and quite a few 70.3s. I've been at a couple of those that he's done. And I think, you know, he's looking forward not only to becoming a first-time finisher, but actually the competition that's going to be there in that division.
Yeah, and another 51-year-old athlete out of Ontario also has an ultra connection through his coach out of Discomfort Coaching. So I'm pretty sure you know who that is. Can you tell us a little bit about Nicholas Dean?
We can indeed. This is a gentleman who's qualified by taking on Ironman Mont Tremblant, which is a phenomenal event. So many people love that event. For many, it's been their number one event in the entire world, in fact. It's a gorgeous place to visit. He's done around 1420 there. He's got 5 Ironman to his credit, and I think nearly 10 70.3s. So obviously we look forward to seeing him here with us. And I think he would be happy to complete probably each of the 3 days and get through it safely and enjoy it with the family who's going to be present. Some coaches come and join us, some stay at home, and obviously we hope that they can tune in to those different finish lines.
Yeah, Steve, just one of the things that we missed hitting on was Mike Coughlin.
Mike Coughlin, yes, thank you for bringing that up, because Mike is actually going to be here for both of these events, which is wonderful because he has an athlete as well that's going to be taking part in Ultraman Canada. And Mike, of course, has been top 3 at Ultraman Canada and had been to the Big Island before, but then in 2015, he won the World Ultraman title, and we were thrilled. As a Canadian, it's nice for me to be there on the Big Island to welcome Canadians. Jordan Bryden, who's done likewise, Tara Norton, Tracy Preston. It's been a thrill to see those guys at the top of their game.
Yeah, and I did speak with Mike back in season 2, episode 7, and that was a great interview if people want to go back and listen to that one. So I look forward to meeting up with him while I'm up here in Penticton as well.
Me too. He's a really, really nice guy and an absolutely brilliant triathlete, but his cycling is just superb. So he's a great coach.
Yeah, and that's with Discomfort Coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know Fred Lambright's come back. It's nice to see a couple of people who come back because maybe they weren't able to finish the first time, but Fred certainly was able to finish and has been with us a couple of times. And we've got, he had the great experience of enjoying 2018. I know his father is also a triathlete. He's done Ironman Texas. He's done Ironman Florida. He's usually in the 13-hour mark. He's done around 29 hours for the Ultra 520 before. So again, he'll be another person to watch for. And again, another person who will have his wife on the crew. Another person in that division is another Albertan and Edmontonian, Mark Woodhouse. I think he's now 55. He, actually an Aussie by birth, but he is a Canadian citizen now. He's got 10 Ironman distance races to his credit, including the World Championships. And I've seen him amongst the top 5 in his division a few times, different races. I think he's got a PR just around 10.5 hours. Whistler was one of his qualifying events as well. So he's been top 5 in his division. So we could expect big things from him because he does train all year round. He's also a very good cross-country skier. So that could pay off big time for him, obviously, in the double marathon on day 3.
Yeah, so from time to time, even without COVID, deferrals are sometimes granted for these races in some very special circumstances. And I know that Steve Brown did a deferral in the case of our next athlete. He is representing France at the race, and he's the only one coming from Europe this year. So can you tell us a little bit about Simon Voss?
I can. This was very sad. He was born in Belgium, by the way, but he's done half a dozen shorter distance ones, a lot of 70.3s, 9 Ironman, including Challenge Roth, Elberman. He's raced in Mexico, Austria, 3 times at Ironman France and the Big Island. But he was supposed to be in this event in 2019, actually on his 50th birthday. But unfortunately, his wife, Anne, got sick. So Steve agreed to postpone his entry and move it over. But sadly, his wife was deceased, and she fought bravely for 3 years, but the disease was stronger. And so he's going to be here, and he's bringing some family with him. I believe his son, Alexander, is going to be here with us, and daughter, Emmeline. So we're just pleased they're going to be here. I think Lisa, his other daughter, is also going to be here. So that's a tough one, but we're really pleased that Simon is eventually going to be at the start line.
Yeah, that's a special one to watch out for, and I'm sure his finish line dedication will be there for his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It says a lot about the quality of the race that Steve Brown puts on, that so many of these people come back to the race again and again. And this next athlete is another one of those who is returning. So next up, we have Michael Richardson from California. He's 55 years old. He did the race previously in 2018. Do you remember his performance there, Steve?
I do. I was pleased to see him back as well, because he was originally out of San Juan Capistrano, I think is where he lives. So, to come with family and say, I like this event, and I really enjoyed the people and I want to come back. We're thrilled because we know the effort it takes. We know that it means you've got to really work hard. He was our 26th finisher that year. So one of the good things for him is that he would like to beat his time. But I think it's also important for us to mention there's major changes in the course. It's no longer the usual course that we've had for quite a few years.
That's right.
Because of what happened in Princeton with the flooding. Now, Ultraman Canada is going to go ahead with the similar course that they've had for the last few years. Because remember, for that race, they had 6 people last year when we were able to put that on. But for this race, Steve has designed a course that basically is all around Okanagan Falls. So it's multiple loops, 2 loops for the swim out of OK Falls and finishing there. And then the bike will finish there, et cetera, and the run. So it's going to be different for him. But the great thing is he and his wife, Christy, will be celebrating their 25th anniversary. I think they did that last month. So it's a great way for them to get together and come here and hopefully enjoy it. His daughter is also going to be with us. So we're just pleased that he's coming back, and hopefully he can improve on his time and his position, because he was 26 last time. There's 16 athletes. Who knows how many are going to be official finishers, but I certainly hope Michael is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you're talking about that course change, Steve was on a couple episodes ago, and when he introduced the idea of the 355, he was explaining that this route is basically going to be the 355 route, and so it's just mostly a couple extra laps of that. So it's a good preview for people that might want to come back and do that 355 as well.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how it unfolds. It certainly has gone down well in Australia and in Mexico. And in fact, Israel has a 355 as well. And I know India's getting one going. So it's like, yeah, it could be something very big eventually. Those people who want to go long, want to go over 3 days and be self-contained throughout. We'll see how things unfold.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably a lot more economical for the athlete to be able to do that as well, and not have to support the crew for those more than 3 days, probably more like 6 days when you tack on the beginning and the end.
It's a lot of cost. And as you know, when you're doing an Ultraman distance event, you need that crew. Even if you don't think you do beforehand, you certainly appreciate it by the end of that, because of the effort it takes and the nutritional needs, having someone to pace you or be along with you on the run, especially, and just to keep you motivated and to keep you on course. So it'll be interesting to see what the athletes say after this event about the course, even though it will be less in terms of distance.
Right. Well, next up is another athlete who was sold by Mr. Brown himself when he was down in Australia for one of the races, and that is Craig Stocks. Can you tell me about Craig Stocks out of Australia?
Yeah, he was originally born in South Africa, I believe, but I've met him a couple of times. Great guy. I really enjoy him. He did 2022 in Australia, because 21 they didn't host. We had I was there in 2019 and 2018, so I've seen him a couple of times do them. He's really good. I really enjoy the guy. He's, I think, a real big talent, and I certainly hope that he's able to come and enjoy this one. He is looking. Remember, I mentioned this Ultra 355 in Mexico. It's 8 weeks after this event. He's actually going to go to that as well. He loves to do the ultras, and his wife Anna is going to hopefully be here with him. I think he could be someone who could potentially take his category based on the fact that he's got the level of experience that he has.
Yeah, and speaking of the 355 in Mexico, Van Sanchez is also in Penticton right now. He's up here to support an athlete from Mexico for the Ultraman Canada race.
Yes, and Van in 2005, 14, I think it was, he became the youngest athlete ever to complete this distance at the Ultraman. He did that at Ultraman UK. Certainly a very, very difficult event to be taking on. And he is the host now in Mexico, at the one in Mexico. So here he is. He puts on not only an Ultraman distance event broken up in 3 days, but he's put a non-stop Ultraman on as well. Mm-hmm. And he's up here with us because he's got a couple of athletes that are going to be taking part this weekend in Ultraman Canada. And again, I'm sure we'll be talking to Steve about the 355 and maybe working together on getting a successful one going here.
And I also saw he did an announcement that he wants to do another 5:15 race up in Texas.
He does. And you may remember the great photographer, cyclist, former record holder from the States who's done Ultraman Canada as well as Ultraman World Championships, Rick Kent. Rick has hosted 2 Ultraman distance races in Texas. So I'm not sure if they've been talking to each other, or is this simply because, Texas is a state above Mexico and a hot triathlon-loving area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rick Kent used to take some great photos up here at Ultraman when he retired from his athletic career. And if you ever go back and look at some of the old photos of Ultraman Canada, a lot of those are his, and those were fantastic.
You bet.
So now we're down to our final competitor, and this is the oldest gentleman in the race. It's Brian Eastcott. He's racing out of Toronto, Ontario. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe why he signed up and what you know about his racing career?
Well, I don't know much about Brian, to be honest with you, except the fact I know he's part of Tara Norton's team Atomica. And Tara, of course, who's been a multiple Ultraman champion on the Big Island and a phenomenal pro triathlete over the years. But I believe he chose this event because his friend Paula Rochman, who was spoken about, also signed up for it. And he qualified last year. He did Ironman Florida in about just over 13 hours and I think 18 minutes. So again, I would think that he's going to be happy to be part of this. He is a marathoner. So he came to running, I think, when he was about 38 years of age. Loves the environment and the passion for Mother Nature. So I think we're going to be embracing someone who is going to be very happy to get to that run and get to that finish line. And certainly he knows how long we've been doing this event. And I think now's the time. When you hit your 60s, you have to look at, what's on my bucket list. And I'm delighted that a friend of his suggested he do this one. And we look forward to seeing how he does out there. So good to see a gentleman in that 60 plus again. I believe I said at the beginning there was 2 women in the 60 plus, and I've forgotten that there was this one gentleman also in that category.
Mm-hmm. It's been great to make sure that we can highlight each and every one of these competitors, with there only being the small amount for the final race. And being that we're coming to the final race of the 520, maybe Steve, you can just take a few moments to reflect on some of your favorite memories from either the 520 or the Ultraman Canada races that were done by Steve Brown back in the day, because I know you've been along for the ride for a long time. When Steve was on a few episodes ago, he shared some of his favorite stories and some of the athletes that really made their mark, and some of the inspiring stories that came out of that. So I'm sure you must have a couple that you can reflect on for us and give us the background to some of this great history that's gone through Penticton with the 520 and the Ultraman Canada with Steve Brown at the helm.
Well, I think over the years we have to remember that you look at some of the early years, and we actually didn't host the event for like 5 or 6 years at one point because there just weren't enough people signing up. And then we decided, let's just do it and see if we can get it back on the ground. And one year we just had 5 athletes do the event. We've had, and I talked about Ultraman previously, when we had 6 men and 1 team last year. So the idea is this is passionate people about the sport and ultra putting these events on in the hope that more and more quality people in terms of their person, not necessarily their talent at the three disciplines, but we have had some major talents come on through. I mean, Kate Bevilacqua, the Australian, became one of the ladies who's won outright. You know, it's been fascinating. Amy Van Tassel has done likewise. So it's been interesting. She did that in Israel, for instance, at the distance, but Kate did that here with us in 2015 and has won the world title as well. So you can see how neat it is to see women getting out and doing such amazing things. And when it comes to a young man, like there's a young man I've seen coming up through the junior rankings as well. And that was Jordan Bryden out of Alberta, who really is passionate about this sport, but he's a big guy. And a lot of people felt he couldn't hang in there, despite the fact he's done like an 8:18 for an Ironman distance, did that in Challenge Roth a few years back. So he came here, and I think it was 2017, surprised us in the terms of the dominance, his performance. Then came back to Penticton again 2019 and ended up winning that one, and then went to the World Championships and stunned the field there by becoming the Ultraman World Champion. So it's been absolutely delightful to see Canadians doing very well. We have to remember there's a sort of Aussie-Canadian Nick Mallet over the years. He's always been part of it. He's won the event a couple of times as well as having been second. He loves the sport. He's always reporting on it. I know he loves listening to your podcast, Larry, and I want to thank you for your interest in this event and the ultra-distance triathlons, because just like ultra trail running, it's really blossoming. And we've got Leander Cave going to be racing this weekend. Leander Cave, who's won Ironman World Championship, Ironman 70.3, Long Course World Championship, Olympic and Standard Distance World Championship. And here she is. She's coming through, and she could potentially be the overall champion. So
yeah, I interviewed her for an Athlete in Profile as well for Ultraman Canada. And yeah, she's looking to get that 5th distance world championship. Well, Steve, thank you for stepping up and taking on the role of both Steves today while Mr. Brown had his technical difficulties at the home studio. And I really appreciate you sharing all the information and the knowledge that you have, because nobody knows these athletes better than you. And I look forward over the next 2 weekends to hearing you call these races and, bringing these people the special attention that they deserve for taking on this challenge, because so many of them are not here to race. They're just here to take on the challenge. And I know every one of them leaves feeling like a rock star once you've announced their name. So thank you once again for giving your time to do these races in Penticton. And we look forward to seeing how these 2 races end up over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks very much, Larry. Always appreciate your attention to these events and to the athletes who undertake them.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.